2 weeks after 5 Chinese state-owned companies announced to voluntarily delist from the U.S. market, China and the United States signed an audit oversight cooperation agreement on August the 26th. The China Securities Regulatory Commission, which signed the agreement, said it is an important step forward by regulators of both sides and that keeping Chinese companies listed on the U.S. markets is an all-win arrangement. What's the significance of this agreement for both sides? How difficult was the negotiation process? Amid tense bilateral relations, are we witnessing a partial thaw in relations? I'm pleased to be joined from Sanya, southern China's Hainan province, by Chen Jiahe, the Chief Investment Officer at Novem RK Technologies, and from Hong Kong by Edward Lehman, the Managing Director at Lehman, Lee and Shu, a Chinese law firm catering to international clients. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Jiahe, let me go to you first. There has been extensive consultation between the two sides over the past decade to arrive at this bilateral audit cooperation deal, and now the two sides have made what China describes as an important first step to fix issues regarding the cooperation. Help us understand exactly what this deal is all about and how crucial is it?
Well, this problem has been there for, I think it's probably over a decade, probably almost 2 decades, ever since we got Chinese companies listing in the United States after the dot-com bubble. They started to have this issue that the United States want to check all the accounting work paper, whichever piece that is. You know, when you have an annual report, that's usually like hundreds of pages, but that doesn't describe everything. You got a lot of accounting papers behind that, probably enough to fool one large flat. So United States want to have access to all this information in the past decade or two. And China says it might concern something like national security data, personal information, these kind of things. And it's very possible. It's a huge amount of data when you talk about one single company, and there are hundreds of companies. So these two countries do not agree with each other. So that has been a dispute over there, and all the companies have been worried, investors have been concerned. And now they are finally coming to a solution that United States says, I still want all this information. China says, fine, but our regulatory committee has to know what you have got. You can have information, but as long as it does not break the law of the security law, this kind of personal information law, these kinds of things, we just have to know what you have got. So this is a kind of agreement that both countries have reached.
Edward, the China Securities Regulatory Commission, or CSRC, stressed that promoting cross-border audit oversight cooperation will further enhance the audit quality of the auditors, protect the legitimate interests of investors, and foster a sound international regulatory environment for companies' pursuit of overseas listings in a lawful and compliant manner. What does this cooperation mean for the 261 Chinese companies already listed in the United States and for those planning to be listed overseas, especially in the U.S.? And what's at stake here for the U.S. side?
Yeah, from the U.S. perspective, they consider it a privilege for foreign companies to have access to USA markets. Those 261 companies that you talked about, it represents about 1.3 trillion US dollars that is being brought to the United States to be traded on these different bourses. And so these are the largest, deepest, most liquid markets in the world. That's the USA perspective. And investors in the United States markets, they believe that everyone should be protected, that they should have trust in the company's financial numbers, regardless of whether the issuer is from a foreign or a domestic place. And further, that foreign issuers want access to our public capital markets. They must be able to play on a level playing field with U.S. firms. Now, I want everyone to be reminded that the PCAOB is a nonprofit corporation that was set up in 2002. And it was really set up not to kind of make things difficult for China-U.S. relations, but it was actually because of the wrongdoers it used to be audit companies self-regulated, and that was not successful in the American market. So it was a mistake that was done there. But prior to this agreement, over 50 jurisdictions have complied with the requirements that the PCAOB to investigate and inspect and audit the firms. And really the holdout was China. So that has raised a bunch of challenges. But in 2020, which has brought this thing forward, so it's been going on for 10 years, the U.S. Congress passed a new law, the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act, reaffirming the requirement that a complete accounting inspections and investigations under the HFCAA, if the PCAOB is unable to inspect and completely investigate the registered public accounting firms, that that there's going to have, for 3 consecutive years, they're going to face a prohibition or be listed.
Right. Well, congratulations on memorizing all of these abbreviations. But the HFCAA basically is this law that's called Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act that was passed in 2020 under Trump administration. Jiahe, now according to that law, as Edward said, if the U.S. Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, which is the PCAOB that Edward was talking about, if this board is unable to inspect the company's public accounting firm for 3 consecutive years, then the company's securities are banned from trade on a national exchange or through other methods. But the act, if you read the text of it, singles out companies that have links to the Chinese Communist Party. To some people, this may really look like not holding foreign companies accountable, but holding Chinese companies accountable. Is this law about politics, or is it about stopping business fraud or misconduct?
Well, I would say it's a kind of both the politics and the business thing. I mean, every law made out would be out of some concern of politics, and economics is also concerned with politics. When you look at Chinese economy, we have grown from a very small percent of the world economy back 4 decades ago to, well, the second largest one of the world right now, and taking a direct challenge to the economic leadership of the United States, at least from some politicians looking in that way. So in that case, when we have like 261 Chinese companies listed in the United States, and the accounting professional says that we really want the working paper of these firms, and that's a very professional thing, and they're right to claim that. That's also the right thing. So that came out to be the law, but that law would be mainly looking at the Chinese companies, because the main problems were concerned with the Chinese companies that they can't get access to the accounting working papers.
Edward, but is the law going to be apolitical when it's being implemented? I mean, are Chinese companies going to be treated in the same manner or according to the same standards as companies from other parts of the world in terms of access to audit papers?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the Americans say. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, and the question is, when is this pudding going to be served up? I mean, the reason, the catalyst for all this has been, like you had said, Doshan, which is when these audits come up, and they've come up recently. The first round, it was going to be 2 strikes. I mean, I'm sorry, it was 3 strikes. If they passed some amendments to this law, it might be 2 strikes. And then there's a question about listing or delisting unless there's full transparency with regards to the PCAOB, which is, remember, it's the one who's overseeing the audit firm. And so there's questions about the implementation of that as well. Is it going to be an even-handed? I think the answer is it's not really, and I think you pointed this out. The HFCAA, which is this Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act, has aimed specifically towards the Chinese Communist Party. So if you look at the actual legislation, it's that if the controllers are members of the party, and it depends on how you want to parse it out, then they have to be there has to be some oversight and delisting that might happen and occur there. So is that even in the 50 other jurisdictions? The answer is no. I mean, so this is specifically looking at towards China. I think it's Herculean that there was an effort made on both sides to try to work out an agreement. But I think that the difficult nature is going to be when these folks come, which is in mid-September, from the PCAOB to actually go through what they need to go through.
Jiahe, how do you look at the implementation process and the challenges that may be involved there? Because, as you mentioned, the enactment of the data security law, the personal information protection law, and other laws clearly identifies the obligations of certain entities on information security and provides a more operational guidance for these companies to follow, and all companies, whether they're listed in the United States or somewhere else or not, they are obligated to comply with laws, of course, in China, which is their home country. So in terms of the operability of this agreement, how could it be carried out within the sphere of local regulations and laws?
Well, I don't think the dispute will just be ended because we have this agreement. You will see a lot of news comes out in the next few months and probably next few years. Because what with this agreement looks like having is that United States can have access to all the work paper, but it has to be followed and with the presence of the Chinese authority. So when they want some information that is really breaking the Chinese Personal Data Act or National Security Information Act, these kind of acts, what can both the authorities do? Can China give the information to the United States? It definitely can't. But can the United States be satisfied because someone says this is a breaking of law, so you can't have this part of the work paper? That will be the problem. We don't think the problem is settled just because of this agreement is made. The capital market will keep on looking. Actually, before this agreement has been made, there has been rumors spreaded on the market, and stocks like Tencent, Alibaba, they have increased by like 5 or 7%. Like 3 or 4 days before this agreement was signed.
Right.
But after this agreement was signed, their stocks become pretty flat. And rumors said Alibaba would be the first to be checked out after this agreement is made. So the stock price dropped by a very slight amount, like 2% today. So it looks like the market is not totally out of its concern about this
Right.
thing. I mean, market is still watching.
Yeah. Basically, you mentioned, the five Chinese, also there was the 5 Chinese state-owned companies, including China Life Insurance, PetroChina, Sinopec Aluminum Corporation of China, and Sinopec Shanghai Petrochemical. They announced they would delist voluntarily from the New York Stock Exchange. So, Edward, do you think with the passing of this deal, there will be less Chinese companies feeling obliged to delist voluntarily because of the possibility that they may be able to stay on in the U.S. capital market?
Yeah, I mean, remember, only about, I think, 25 have been identified right now. There were these 5 that you mentioned, China Life Insurance, PetroChina, Sinopec, the Aluminum Corporation of China, and Sinopec Shanghai. They've announced to delist, and I don't think that had to really do with the audit dispute sector. I think that had to do with specifically the law that was passed that was saying that the party should not be involved. So these are state-owned enterprises. Companies like Alibaba, I mean, I certainly don't think that would be considered a state-owned enterprise, and that would not be something.
Okay.
I think what you're going to see is those that are state-owned
we have to leave it there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we have to leave it there. Sorry for interrupting, but many thanks to Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer from Novem RK Technologies, and Edward Lehman, Managing Director of Lehman, Lee and Xu Law Firm.